Billy Corben, a few minutes away. Billy, the writer, director, producer of things like 3030s, Broke, The U2, one of the very first, not first, but, kind of cult-like documentaries was Cocaine Cowboys. I know everybody's probably seen that.
Yes.
And that was about the 80s cocaine trade.
That was a good movie.
Oh, that was great. It was. I guess it wasn't a documentary. It was more of a movie, wasn't
it? It was kind of both.
Yeah. And that, I don't know if that would really put Billy on the map. I think that might have been his first real big commercial deal, and it was about the cocaine trade in the 80s in Miami. Miami's still kind of one of the very few cities that there's some Guido, shady, thug type mentality, right? Like Miami kind of still, and even Billy says this in the film, Miami's still kind of stuck in the 80s with regards to getting stuff done, and you got a guy who's got a guy, right? Because all these
gotta have cash.
These slicksters have all moved down from New York, so they got the New York racket going on, and then they got, I think the drug trade racket is probably alive and kicking. Isn't drug trade racket pretty much Miami's ground zero?
Yeah.
Of everything, right? I think this is Billy.
I've got a ground zero right here with Soupy John cheered 1,000 bits, and Bizos Dizzy 1,500, and JJ Charger 10,000.
God, not to be underscored by Billy's on the line. JJ Charger. Then I think he may have gone to Miami and got like one of those credit card readers, and he's stealing credit cards or something. JJ's out of control. Billy, you're on the air. Are you feeling better?
I'm not. Thank you for asking. But,
it's because you've been doing this big media junket and talking about your new film.
Yes, I think I've been burning the candle at both ends.
How'd the Joe Rogan thing go? How's Joe doing?
Joe's great. It was pretty wild, actually. Usually, he runs me pretty ragged. I feel like I've been sitting in the sauna for 3 hours by the time I'm done with him. But he was pretty chill. I think it was because it was like the fourth podcast he did for the day. The man is a beast.
Oh, so how does Joe's thing work? Like, will he just get do work on a couple days and get a couple in the can, or like a week's worth in the can? Is that how he does it?
I don't know exactly that there's a set system because usually he's touring the country. So I think depending on his schedule, when he's in town and people are around, I was in town and he's got buddies who come in. Like, he'll just record a bunch of them back to back, and I think he throws them up like immediately. They run live, and then he's amazing.
What's his studios like? Are they at his house or a building?
No, it's like a warehouse, and it's like a man cave, kind of playground. It's really cool. A really cool complex, and the man's like a machine. I don't know how he does it.
Well, and man, he's almost like one of the, as when you're promoting something now, like on your deal, or it's almost like he's almost a must-have guy you got to have in your court. He's like in that new family of you got to do the Joe Rogan show. It's a got to do show to get whatever you're getting and slinging out.
He's the modern day Johnny Carson.
Kind of is he not? Anyway, I got Billy Corben on the phone. Billy's new documentary is called Screwball, not to be confused with the Cocaine Cowboys, the U, Broke, the U2, the U Part 2. We were just talking before you got on the phone, Billy. It seems as though Miami, because we live in Tampa, Tampa's kind of wannabe Miami, but we're not. Right. We're like the white trash version of Miami. But it seems like Miami is kind of still the epicenter of all drugs. Is it still like that, Billy?
It's not necessarily the epicenter of drugs. I mean, we certainly are still a major transshipment point, for South America. I mean, that's just by virtue of the geography. The earth hasn't shifted quite yet. South Florida is still situated exactly where it is. We still have thousands of miles of unpatrolled, unmonitored shoreline. It's still a great transshipment point. But I think it's more of a culture of permissiveness that really pervades and continues to pervade. The idea that, or the, I guess, perception that Miami is kind of lawless or exists in this kind of gray market economy, as I call it, and the perception that everything and everyone here is for sale in some way. I think that's what would probably, lends itself to that continued reputation. And it's not untrue. I mean, we still are one of the most corrupt places, I think, in the country. I think we certainly, since we don't really have much indigenous industry beyond the tourism and sunshine type trades, real estate and hospitality and restaurants and hotels and
like Google and Microsoft aren't based in Miami.
Exactly, and so what we sell is the sunshine. We sell the Florida dream in temporary doses sometimes, and certainly for any of your condo money laundering needs, we are available for you.
Billy Corben on the phone. Billy and I are going to talk about Screwball. And Billy, I got to be honest with you. I've known you for a little bit now, and we've had you on the air, and I'm familiar with your stuff. I love Cocaine Cowboys. I loved Broke. I just love all your stuff. And I got to think this is probably, and I'm not just saying this, I'm just not saying this, Billy, like this is probably your best thing I've seen you ever do.
Well, thank you. I got to say we certainly worked hardest on this than we've ever worked on anything before, and we took a lot of chances, a lot of risks on it, and so far the response has been really really positive.
What did Rogan say about it? Did Joe see it?
He watched it in the gym.
What was Joe's take on it? Because I got so many things to talk about, and so many things that you've never seen before, and some of the risk that you talk about in making of the Screwball documentary that comes out on Friday that I want to get into it. But what was Joe's spin on it?
Well, Joe loved it. I was really relieved. Cocaine Cowboys is one of his favorites. He mentions it all the time, and people are always blowing up my phone whenever he does, and it's quite flattering. And he watched it, much like you, in preparation for our interview. And he was I think he was blown away. I think people think that Cocaine Cowboys is kind of a benchmark, and I think it is for our careers and filmography. But through the years, you always try to find a way to outdo yourself, and you're not always successful. To be honest, sometimes you're going to miss a few, but we really felt strongly about this one. Very confident in it, considering how hard we worked on it, and so far so good. I mean, as far as the response is concerned, I really appreciate you saying that.
Now, when does it come out? Where can people get it? This Friday, it's going to be in select theaters and then video on demand. But is there any sexier? Are you Netflix? Are you HBO, Showtime? Any of that stuff?
Well, for the moment, yeah, it's in theaters actually right now, but only 12 cities, like you said. And then this Friday, it'll be available video on demand. But that's pretty much everywhere. I mean, it's Amazon and iTunes and pay-per-view and anywhere you can think of to stream something, you'll be able to get it, short of Netflix. But we're still working on having it available on a platform, on the regular like that.
The story is called Screwball, and this is Billy Corben on the phone. So enough of the pleasantries and what Billy's all about, and he's world famous, and a lot of people think that this is a pretty. I watched this thing last night, and so here are my notes, and this thing starts out in, I think, is it circa 03, 04? Is that when the movie kind of opens up?
Well, that burglary was like 2012, so it's later, and then it flashes back from there.
Yeah, it kind of establishes a 2012. But the thing you see when it first opens up is kids. 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old boys and girls, and the characters that this Screwball documentary portrays, the Alex Rodriguez, the Tony Bosch, all the players are portrayed by kids, and they're the ones that kind of do the reenactment of the documentary. Now, on the surface, I know people are like, "Oh, Bubba, you're just kissing Billy's ass because he's your friend." How in the hell could you make kids to be taken seriously? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, and it probably does sound like the dumb. But Billy, it is so artistically pulled off and so funny, smart-assy, but yet, the entire message is delivered. Who thought of using the kids? And Billy, I'm going to tell you something. If the kid sucked, I'd be like, Billy, I think you kind of missed it with the kids. I don't think it really worked. I'd tell you. But it's completely opposite, and who thought of it?
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, that was part of what I mentioned earlier, the big gamble. That was certainly it. It was very logistically complicated. It was very, as you saw in terms of the production values, it was a little bit much. And so we went all in on this idea, and it was my idea. It was my concept. I'm sorry, it wasn't really my concept, but it was my idea. And we had a unique challenge here. You mentioned some of our other documentaries, and when you do sports documentaries like the U, for example, about the University of Miami Hurricanes, football championship legacy, it's a pretty straightforward process. It's I don't want to call it paint by numbers, but like the process is you talk to sports people and they talk to you about sports games. And you get footage of the sports games, and you put the sports game footage on top of the sports guys talking.
Right, you show a Michael Irvin as a Miami Hurricane, and then maybe you go to a B-roll footage of Michael Irvin today's environment, and then you go back to other people that knew Michael Irvin. But it's all pretty much just like you're right, paint by numbers. Michael Irvin.
And you have game footage,
right?
Basically, is what you have. So see, this isn't a sports documentary. This is certainly baseball adjacent, but it's not really about baseball. So there's no baseball games really to show or to use. And you got guys like Manny Ramirez and Alex Rodriguez who are famous figures, and there is footage of them or paparazzi stills of them, but they're only in so much of it. A lot of this shady story took place, in some fake doctors, shady clinic
at Boca Tan.
Yes, at tanning salons or at hotel rooms or locker rooms or nightclubs, and so you don't have footage of that. There isn't B-roll of that you can just. So we knew that we were going to have to do these recreations, these reenactments, and so as a documentary filmmaker, that's always a little frightening because we're all about keeping it real, and the real people and the real footage and the real stuff. And so when you have to kind of film fake stuff, it sticks in your craw.
And especially kids, using kids as the actors on a drug steroid kind of deal even gives you that much more of a kind of a pain in the ass deal.
But listen, not all doping docs are created equal. They're not all so serious. This was a bit of a farce.
Who was your favorite character played by kids? My favorite kid character was Porter. The kid that played Porter. You guys kept making him, putting more stuffing in him, making more jacked up and more jacked up. I love that.
Yeah, I love Porter. There's some characters later on. There's like the CFO of the company, Ricky Martinez.
Where did you find these kids? Where did you find these kids? Did you go to acting schools, or were they just your cousins?
All in South Florida. We hired a wonderful casting director, Lori Wyman, down in Miami. She's been here forever. Knows all the talent, and so we were. I think some of the kids came as far as Fort Myers, but it was all predominantly South Florida kids, and certainly 100% Florida talent, which was pretty impressive.
Let me give people an example of what I'm talking about, Manson. This is a reenactment. We're watching Screwball, which officially comes out on Friday on your video on demand. You can go to screwballfilm.com. Billy Corben's on the phone right now via his Fort Lauderdale mansion, probably. So, Manson, they're going to tell a story about how Tony Bosch, the doctor that's behind all this, got introduced to Alex Rodriguez, okay? And Alex sends one of his thug-ass cousins that are on payroll to Bosch's makeshift office. So they have to show that in the film, so they do it with kid actors. Here's this particular situation.
Cousins in the Yankees. That was a
Here we go. Oh, I don't know if they showed the exchange. Here's the footage. I don't know if they show the exchange.
This guy says, yeah, my cousins in the Yankees. That was a
So that's how they do it. Like this, this is real.
He felt a lot quicker.
This guy says, yeah, my cousins in the Yankees. That was a
And so they use kids, to do what really happened in real life. Yeah. And so it starts out with Tony Bosch, and he's this guy who gets a medical degree from Belize, right, Billy?
As you do.
Yeah, as you do. And he goes down and he wants to be a doctor, but he's kind of a screw up in life. He's kind of guidoed out. His dad's a doctor in Miami, and he goes to Belize and gets a medical license. He then comes back to Miami, and Billy, I think he first starts just helping people do nutritional kind of things, right?
Yeah, he's doing protocols for people who are looking to lose weight or maybe gain muscle mass, and he's basically recommending supplements and vitamins and a protocol for you to accomplish those things, and he's getting results. He's got happy customers who are referring him to other people, and he starts to sort of expand into what at the time was the anti-aging clinic world that was burgeoning in South Florida.
Well, and you kind of drew correlations to that, as this is now, I think, when Rick Scott's here, who's the shadiest guy ever, and all these little strip malls are now opening up, slinging this stuff that they probably couldn't be slinging because Rick Scott could care less about medical fraud.
Well, yeah, there's this major, as I refer to it, the gray market economy. There's this major gray market area with these anti-aging clinics, which are, you have some entrepreneur like, say, Tony Bosch, who is not a licensed, physician in the state of Florida, but the state of Florida being what it is, a retirement mecca for a lot of people, including doctors who want to go, play golf for the rest of their lives, but they still have prescription pads and active DEA numbers. And I know doctors in the state of Florida whose fax machines back in the day would be constantly filled with solicitations from people like this who are like, you want to make some extra money on the side? Rent us your prescription pad. Be the, quote, medical director of a clinic, and then they basically use your DEA number to access HGH, human growth hormone, testosterone, things you need a doctor's, a prescription for, and they basically use that, and the medical directors are rarely, if ever, show up.
They're on the golf course and they're getting paid $100,000 a year for their DEA number and their prescription pad, and they got guys like Tony Bosch, and they're just green lighting everything and making grandmas feel better and prescribing really aggressive stuff while having a governor who really doesn't care because he's the biggest medical fraud guy ever.
Yeah, when you have the biggest Medicare fraudster in the history of the United States as your chief executive of the state, you don't exactly have a crackdown, let's say, on medical-related fraud in the state. Not to mention, as you know, we don't have a state income tax here in Florida. We kind of subsist from hustle to hustle. I think it was Carl Hyacin who said, in Florida, we don't produce anything but oranges and machine guns, and really sunshine is the third thing. So we kind of have to, whenever there's a hustle that comes up, like the pill mill crisis, for example, at the peak of that crisis during Rick Scott's...
That was a straight hustle, was it not, Billy?
Dude, 7 people a day were dying from it, though. It was a straight hustle. In Broward County, there were more pill mills serving up Oxy than there were McDonald's locations in the county, for crying out loud.
Wow.
So, and in Florida, you can't really afford to crack down on a hustle like that too quickly because everybody's got to make some money first.
Oh, yeah, everybody's in on it. Like the family that was running Bo-Katan, everybody's in on it.
Yeah, you got to let it slide for a while just so everybody can get greased. And then you go, oh, we got to do something about this. People are dying. And then they pretend to care and they shut it down. And that's kind of like, what happened in this story.
Billy Corben on the phone, his new documentary, Screwball, available in select theaters now. Video on demand and various other places on Friday. Please go see it. I watched all 100-some minutes of it yesterday, took 5 pages of notes, even texted Billy last night saying, Billy, this is really, really good. So we're talking about Tony Bosch. He's this kind of guy that goes to Belize, gets this medical license. He's kind of has these strip mall anti-aging deal things in Miami. And then he gets lucky, and he somehow gets a hold of Manny Ramirez, right? That's how it goes, Billy, right? Manny Ramirez was his first client.
Yeah, his first VIP client, is how he refers to him. It was his first major league client and his first client that he did what he referred to as a concierge service, which meant that he would hit the road and travel with him whenever and wherever necessary.
With micro-dosing. Remember? Micro-dosing, wasn't it?
Yeah, this was his shtick. His pitch was, I could beat the new Major League Baseball random testing system that came after the Mitchell report, which was after the Balco scandal, which was after the
McGuire-Socha deal.
Exactly, the major 90s anabolic steroid scandal that we all remember, that really brought baseball back from the brink to tell you the truth, as far as popularity and ratings.
Yeah, because baseball was done because they had the strike, and they're like, man, we need to get a bunch of human gorillas jacked up on some stuff to hit 70 home runs so we can get people back into the ballparks because the strike almost killed us.
And it worked. Everybody knew what was going on. You could see these guys; their necks were suddenly like my waist, out of nowhere. They were these skinny rookies, and all of a sudden they're smacking balls to Guantanamo, and everybody knew what was up. And so this is. This is what it took really to save America's pastime, is lying, cheating, and stealing. And so
the Balco deal, the Mitchell report, that's like what, 2000, 2001, 2002-ish, right?
Early, or 2000, I think by the time the report came out, it was 2003, but that was all in the wake of the 90s.
Right.
Late 90s fiasco, essentially. And
so at this point, man, all the players are they're scared. They don't know what to do. You got Manny Ramirez, who has the testosterone levels of a 90-year-old man. Because these guys are so afraid of the Mitchell report and this random testing that Major League Baseball. And then here comes Tony Bosch, and he says, I can beat the random testing through my micro dosing. And Billy, quite frankly, it works, does it not?
For a while it does. I mean, he says you take exactly this amount of this substance at precisely this time, in advance of a game, and if they spring a P test on you, you'll pass it. But Manny fails one.
Well, because Manny injected, and because Tony Bosch had some strict rules: never inject your testosterone game day, and Manny messed up, injected game day, got caught. And that's where, but in 2007, before Manny met Tony Bosch, he had 20 homers. He gets on the Tony Bosch deal, and he hits 38 the next year, gets a new 2-year, $45 million deal from the Dodgers. So it's cost of doing business, isn't it, Billy?
And really, what incentive is there not to cheat when you see those kind of dollar figures? I mean, why not?
So Manny gets busted. And at this point, everybody's freaking out, right? Because Manny gets busted, but that actually makes Tony Bosch's business explode more in Miami now because people know where to get to stuff, right?
Well, you have to remember, this is a shady business. He's not doing traditional advertising. He doesn't have billboards or TV commercials. So word of mouth is how he thrives, is satisfied customers telling other people that I'm getting results thanks to this guy. You got to go see Dr. T, Dr. Tony. And so this was the greatest advertising money couldn't buy. I mean, him being Manny Ramirez's guy and having gotten Manny, as you said, to nearly double his homers, to get a $45 million, I think that was just a 2-year contract with the Dodgers. I mean, that kind of say, whether he got caught or not, it kind of tells you everything you need to know. And if you're in the baseball business or need some anti-aging services, he became the go-to guy in Miami thanks to that scandal.
So what everybody thought would be bad actually blew his business up. At this point, he's got cops that are trying to get on it. He's got a cop discount. He's got multiple locations, and he's really rolling it. He really, the Manny Ramirez thing really didn't hurt him. It exploded him, did it not, Billy?
Yeah, and he thought he was really worried at the time. The DEA was allegedly investigating, and he thought that this was going to be the end of the line for him. And that was back in 2009. Meanwhile, he couldn't have dreamed how big his business would get, especially after that, where he thought for sure, I'm going to prison. This is over. And instead, he just started getting clients and money hand over fist.
That's when that's when parents started now bringing their high school athletes in. And at this point, Tony was given, HGH and testosterone to kids that were still in high school. At the end of the day, that's what put him in prison, the high school kids.
And rightfully so. In Miami, he had relationships, Tony did, with a lot of coaches and a lot of sports agents. And so that's really where initially his referrals would come from. Before clients would start telling other clients, it started with agents and coaches, whether they were college coaches or high school coaches, and agents, of course, representing a litany of young professional players. That's where it all started, and very much, Tony. The movie makes the point that Miami is kind of a small town, and Tony, is a Cuban kid who grew up in Miami. in the 1980s, and there's really only a couple degrees of separation between anybody in Miami, in the Cuban community and that era. So there was a lot of, and of course that community has a lot of ball players, in it, and people who come here for the opportunity to play ball. And so you just had this area and this environment where the word of mouth just totally thrived.
New documentary called Screwball, available Friday wherever you get your on video on demand and in the theaters now. Billy Corben on the phone talking about Larry Bosch. This about what the documentary is about. His business starts to explode. He starts prescribing so much test that he can't even buy it legitimately, so he has to start going onto the black market. I forget what his name. Quay. What was the guy that was doing the black market that was building? Oogie. Manson. He had to go to Oogie, who was making tests in his garage, and then be able to keep all these athletes in test.
Yeah, Oogie wasn't, but Oogie knew a guy. He had a connect.
Oogie knew a guy,
market.
so he's getting just gallons of that. Then here comes Alex Rodriguez. Alex Rodriguez is getting a little old. He hears about what this guy's Tony Bosch's system did for Manny Ramirez, and he summons Dr. Tony Bosch to Tampa. He comes to Tampa, meets A-Rod. A-Rod opens the door, and the first thing he says is, "I want what Manny Ramirez is on." Is that right, Billy?
I hope that when you say Dr. Tony Bosch, you're throwing air quotes up.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure.
Dr. Tony Bosch from Belize.
Doctor, yes, doctor. I think our one of our interview subjects, Tim Elfrink, he refers to the school as the Belize School of the Medical and Performing Arts that Tony attended.
And so I think Bosch says, listen, it's $80,000 down, and it's $12,000 a month for me to be your personal, valet nutrition, or it's you can have me full time for $200,000. I think those were the numbers you gave, Billy.
Yeah, those are the numbers Tony gave us. Alex Rodriguez was apparently interested in exclusivity, in Tony being on call and on demand and not treating any other ball players, but always available to him and available to him wherever he would need it, meaning,
right.
Jump on a plane and be in
come
Milwaukee
inject me
tomorrow.
and inject me in Milwaukee. So Bosch goes up to New York, sees A-Rod's apartment. A-Rod's got, listen to this, Manson, in A-Rod's apartment, it's all white from head to toe, and there's all the video screens are playing highlights from his career.
And pictures of him as a centaur.
Yeah, him as a centaur. Man, he's a little bit full of himself, isn't he, Billy?
He's an extraordinarily interesting character, I'll have you know. And then I would have loved to have interviewed him. I think he's a very interesting and complicated guy. He's a bit enigmatic. I think, people don't really understand him. And certainly while he was playing, he was a very guarded, a kind of fragile sort of character. He's kind of come out of his shell, I think, since then. But I think when you're a baseball player, and athletes are damn superstitious, and you're trying to keep your, what do Yogi Berra say? Half the game is 90% mental. I think you're trying to keep your eye on the ball, literally and figuratively, and you're trying to find ways to kind of psych yourself into remembering how great you were or can be. And I think it messes with your head, man. I think when you're as young as he was, when he got that rich and that famous, I think it messes with your head. And so I think it kind of, what I say, like in the world of rehab, the world of, people who are addicts, they say that you stop developing emotionally when you start using, whenever that age is. You're that 11-year-old kid who went to mom's medicine cabinet, and started dipping into the prescription pills and self-medicating. You could grow older, but you are always sort of emotionally that age. And I think that's true for famous people who become that rich and that famous. I mean, I'm talking Justin Bieber famous, I think he's forever an 8-year-old boy, no matter how much older he gets. I think you just you're emotionally stunted when people don't realize that when you become famous to the point where you can't walk outside, dip into a drugstore for a pack of gum, without getting mobbed.
Emotionally stunted. I like that. I think I'm going to start using that.
It's a crazy world, I mean, people think being rich and famous is fun. Being that rich and famous can be a miserable and stressful and bizarro existence. And so I think that, I think it makes you get centaur paintings of yourself or something. I don't know.
So then enter Billy Corben on the phone talking about Screwball. Comes out Friday. Then comes the next character in your doc, which I hate this guy. I mean, again, I don't know the guy, but I watched your doc, and I think this guy's the biggest dick ever. Porter Fisher. And you know what? Porter Fisher, Billy, is officially, and I use air quotes, that guy. He's the guy that just wants to fit in and be cool, and he's just that guy that won't go away. Is he not? He's the stray that you fed one time, and he won't go away.
Well, is that your beef with him, though? I mean, is that your problem with him?
Well, I just think, like, I don't know, man. I just think that he's like a narc little bitch. I just think that I don't know. I thought that he came across as just a little conniving, keeping score bitch.
Oh, he's a sucker.
And a sucker. I mean, now, are you friends with Porter? Is like that your guy? I hope that doesn't make you mad.
No, it doesn't. Listen, everybody, when we make these documentaries, everybody's entitled to their opinion. It's really up to the audience. You know, we try not to cast judgment in the documentary. We try to present it as objectively, honestly, accurately, fairly.
I mean, nothing
possible.
screams douchebag, Billy, more than being a professional tanner.
Well, I think that was a little tongue in cheek, but he does self-identify as a.
Well, but he said that too. I'm a professional tanner. Like, it's not like you just put that on him and he didn't agree. Like, he said, I am a professional tanner.
You can see that color that he sprays onto himself. I believe it's actually called Tampa Orange. I think that's what the name of that hue is.
And so this guy named Porter Fisher is kind of this dumpy-looking not fat guy, but not necessarily in shape, Manson. And by the way, his favorite thing to do is to hang. He's officially that guy. He likes to hang out at the tanning salon and talk to people about products and what bulbs are the best. And
wow.
Yeah, so Tony Bosch is getting ready to enter a place called Boca Tanning, and it's a 24-hour tanning place there in Miami at the time. And I didn't know this, but per capita, Florida, has the most sunshine, you can naturally get tan, has the most tanning beds of anybody in America. Don't you think Wisconsin or Montana would? People that can't get sun. We have the most tanning beds, and so Tony Bosch enters into like an agreement with this tanning place, and Porter gets involved because Porter is kind of like the Quasimodo of the tanning salon. He just kind of talks to people and really didn't have much going on. And then, God, Billy, you got to take it from here. Like, it's almost exhausting. Like, we've only just begun on like how shady this thing really gets. Like, as if you didn't think it was shady enough, this is where it really gets involved. Like, where Major League Baseball gets involved and people are paying off people. It's crazy.
Well, I do want to say, and someone makes this point in the documentary, that Porter is incredibly earnest and wears his heart on his sleeve. And he definitely is not shy about the fact that he was kind of looking for a place to.
He needed to get laid, is what they needed. He needed like a hobby or a girlfriend or a boyfriend. He needed some ass, is what he needed.
Well, this became his hobby, hanging out at this 24-hour tanning salon, and this became his hobby. And then when he realized he was getting a little overweight, the tanning salon was across the street from the University of Miami, so there's a lot of very young, attractive, kids in good shape coming in and out. He started to look at himself and realize he was not young and in good shape.
Porter.
And then when he finds out about Tony Bosch opening this little clinic inside the tanning salon, he decides to go to him for first weight loss, which is he puts him on a very effective protocol. And second, he wants to build muscle mass. He tells Tony he wants to look like Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah, man. So a guy that hangs out at the 24-hour tanning salon comes to the shyster Tony Bosch and says, I want to look like Sly Stallone. And you know what? Tony Bosch is going to take all your money in the world, right?
Heck yeah.
So he does. And it works, does it not, Billy?
I think the movie is fun. It's so much more fun when you explain it. When I'm telling you this. I'm absolutely delighted and entertained by.
Well, I mean, but that's how involved. Like, I even established my favorite characters, and I think Porter's a dick, and I think that's how much I was into this thing. It's got like 6 or 7 stories within the story. It blows your mind.
Oh, and this is when it all hits the fan because Porter decides that he wants to invest in Tony's business. He wants to get involved in a way that he can't get necessarily. They can't just get him out of. Meaning like he's going to be a partner. He's going to be a part of it. He's already hanging out at Tony's new clinic all the time.
So let me explain it here. So, Manson, you got Porter, who likes to go and hang out at the 24-hour tanning salon, and now his new best friend is Tony, because Tony's got the TT99 juice that's jacking him up in the gym. So now he starts hanging out at Tony's joint, right?
Yeah.
And Tony's kind of down on his luck right now. He just got busted again for the Milky Cabrera deal, and he doesn't know what to do. He's bleeding litigation money. He's got a child custody issue coming up. He's got a $60,000 Coke bill, and he sees a suck up.
Only $6,000 a month.
I'm sorry,
$6,000. Carried away.
Yeah, $6,000 a month Coke bill, Manson, and he has this mark, this wet behind the ear groupie that wants to give him $4,000 as an investment because he wants to do the marketing here because he likes hanging out. I mean, a sucker's born every minute.
It's a bizarre arrangement. And at this time, Tony had already been squeezed out of the Boca tanning salons because Shady recognized Shady, and the Corben brothers who run the
Manson. The Corben brothers kicked out Tony Bosch because they thought he was shaking him down, but they were really shaking him down. So it was a reverse shakedown with two Guidos that kicked each other out. Now he's got his own little joint, and he's got Porter that comes out ton of wagon saying, "I love this place so much that I'm getting big. I want to be the marketing guy here, and I want to give you $4,000 investment." What do you think shyster ass Tony said? Sign right here, buddy, like you're at the carnival.
Yeah. And I don't really understand. I mean, I made a whole documentary about this. I've read all the available paperwork and research on this, and I don't really understand exactly the specifics of the nature of this deal. So one of them describes it, Tony describes it as an investment, Porter describes it as a loan. There seems to be some evidence to suggest that it was a loan, that Tony was going to pay it back with some sort of interest on a weekly basis, that it was like a short-term loan. It's very unusual, this arrangement, but the bottom line is Tony puts that $4,000, I would think, directly up his nose.
Exactly.
And so
there is no more $4,000, Manson. The business is, and so, but now Porter, the tanning pro tanner, he wants his money back, and so he starts hanging out at the office nonstop, and when am I getting my money? When am I getting money? Sending his texts. When am I getting my money? Like just driving Tony crazy, and Tony keeps sloughing him off on a couple of his little deals, and they're like, "We'll get you paid. We'll get you paid." Well, finally, Porter gets mad, and he steals all of Tony's files with all the athletes' name in them, his little books and who did what and who got what kind of juice. And then that's where it even takes even a crazier turn, Billy.
You have to remember, simultaneous to this, Tony is absolutely hitting rock bottom. In addition to all of the litigation Bubba referred to, he is, obviously going on these benders, drinking, drugging. He never has any money. He whatever. What does he say? For every dollar he had, he spent $2.
Right.
And he would get money. Let's say a player would give him $15,000 cash. He'd grab his girlfriend, go to New York, check into a fancy hotel, and check out when the money was gone, and then hit the road again to make more money. I mean, he was not paying his child support. It was a very reckless, a downward spiral. And players started pissing dirty. So now,
you got 20 guys that peed dirty, right?
Yeah, well, there's 2 in a row. Melky Cabrera was one of them, and it was just devastating. And he knew he was hitting. He knew this is the end of the line. He thought he hit it in 2009, but now it's 2012. He managed to get in a few more years and a whole lot more money than he ever thought he was going to make. And he's just sort of, he's living life like it's going to end. The party's going to end any day now. And at the same time, he's got this. What's the line from Dark Knight when it's an unstoppable object, an unstoppable.
Oh yeah, he's got pissed off Porter.
Movable object. Yeah,
he's got pissed off Porter, Manson, who's out $4,000, and pissed off Porter. God forbid, he's mad. So now he takes all the books, and he meets with a reporter and gives the guy all the records.
Blew it all.
And to the reporter for nothing. So then Alex Rodriguez people and all these people now are trying to find who's got the books, right, Billy?
Everybody wants these records.
Major League Baseball wants these records. Everybody wants it.
Some of them are actual files, but a lot of them are composition books. Tony kept like CVS brand composition books that he was scribbling down little doodles, little kind of stream of consciousness, almost diary thoughts, and then also the medical records, so to speak, if you can call them that, because Tony is not exactly a licensed physician, but he's got him in these composition books that just become like the briefcase in Pulp Fiction now. Everybody wants to get their hands.
Now, Billy,
on
do
these
you
medical
think
records.
if Tony would have stepped up and just did Porter right when he wanted the $4,000 back, and Tony just would have scratched and got it from somewhere, I don't think Porter would ever. I don't think they would have ever gotten out. I don't think Porter would have ever done it.
I don't know if Tony could have made it happen fast enough, because you have to realize this meltdown occurred in like 4 weeks. This wasn't over some long period of time. It was only $4,000, which I don't belittle. It's a lot of money, but like you give somebody, a little bit of time to come up with the money. This blew up in like 4 weeks. And so I think that at some point, Porter's fuse was damn short. And I think at some point, he just was too far gone, meaning because at some point, weeks into the process, they did try to pay him, you'll recall,
right.
And then he was demanding a higher rate of interest. There's some facts that aren't in the documentary just for time where Tony's, brother, for example, started to reach out. But this was after the 4 weeks,
right.
Meaning like Porter was already working with Tim Elfrink and turning over these documents to the Miami New Times, who was working on this expose that was just going to explode in early 2013. So there came a point where it was over, meaning like there was no amount of money that they could have paid Porter after the first 4 weeks that could have stopped this.
So then the article comes out, and it's just an absolute. I mean, it was one of the biggest scandals ever to hit Major League Baseball ever.
Yeah, and it was all as a result. And I should say, Alex Rodriguez is collateral damage. I mean, the highest paid baseball player in history, his career effectively ended over this $4,000 debt between a cocaine-addicted fake doctor and his fake tan-addicted steroid patient.
And you know what? That in itself, what you just said, Billy, is pretty much the whole thing in a nutshell, is it not? It really is.
It's what makes it so absurd. I think it's what makes it such a such a tale of Florida, such an only in Miami kind of story, is that these major duty baseball players were really just a sideshow or supporting characters in what was otherwise this very Elmore Leonard, Carl Hyacin, Coen Brothers-esque, tale of Florida.
So the plot thickens. So the bottom line is now Dr. Tony's screwed. He's done. Like he has, there's no way out. So Manson, he decides to be a witness for Major League Baseball, right? Like, okay, because Major League Baseball wants A-Rod. That's their number one prize, is to make an example out of A-Rod. And he turns, Major League Baseball witness. And so they fly him up to go to arbitration against Alex Rodriguez. And the night before, he has a cocaine party with strippers. Does he not, Billy?
Basically, yeah. In New York, theoretically on Major League Baseball's dime.
Yeah. Goes up there for arbitration. They got Alex Rodriguez is there at arbitration. Alex Rodriguez is such a narcissist that he asks when you pull up to the arbitration outside in the building in New York, there was protesters, all these people that were rallying for A-Rod. They were all paid. Didn't A-Rod promise them pizza to protest for him?
Yeah, I think the organizer got some cash, but everybody else who was out there holding posters, which if you look not very closely,
they're just all the same. They're all written by the same guy.
Yeah, it's all the same handwriting. It's like the same poster board and Sharpie marker with very sort of elaborate.
Isn't that sad though? The world we live in now, Billy. That now you don't even know if protesters are real. Like protesters are probably fake paid people as well.
Yeah, but to me, this is just the whole story is kind of the new American values to me. And is it any surprise that America's pastime is just about lying, cheating, and stealing?
So baseball, Manson has A-Rod dead to rights. They got Tex and Tony's there. A-Rod flips out. Rather than take it like a man, whenever he flips out, he starts having a fit on everybody. He kicks the lawyer's briefcase, storms out of the building.
And goes on a radio show, the Mike Francesca radio show.
Goes right on down to Mike Francesca and looks like a complete crybaby. Does he not, Billy?
Well, in hindsight, certainly, because we know he was lying about everything. I mean, at the time, he looked like he was putting up a staunch defense for his legacy and his career, but the truth is he wasn't telling the truth at the time. And you do have to remember this, too, because you mentioned this in passing, but you can't put too fine a point on it. Major League Baseball sent their investigators down to Miami, and they acted like clowns. I mean, like
thugs trying to buy people off.
Yeah, I mean, they had cash, $125,000 cash that they were passing off to a convicted felon in a diner in South Florida for stolen medical records that they knew were stolen. That, in fact, someone alleges in the documentary was a crime committed by Major League Baseball investigators that was never effectively investigated or prosecuted in Florida. So you had them running around with this slush fund cash, Major League Baseball investigators seducing and sleeping with a nurse who worked in one of Tony's clinics.
One of the Major League Baseball investigators slept with and had an affair with one of the nurses at Tony's office and broke his marriage up, didn't he?
They sent out gifts to Tony's girlfriend at the time and sent her shoes and flowers. There was a car chase involving Porter Fisher in the South Miami area that involved private investigators that were either hired by Major League Baseball or Alex Rodriguez. This turned into this whole cottage industry down here in Miami, where you had this multi-billion-dollar organization, Major League Baseball, this multi-millionaire in Alex Rodriguez, all of them just throwing money to try to...
Like a Miami Vice episode within their little baseball world, right?
Yeah, and it was just this... It was this sub-industry, that popped up, this cottage industry that just people who knew what was happening could get on the inside of, and some of that money would trickle to them. There was literally millions of dollars practically out on the street, certainly hundreds of thousands that people could get if they could inject themselves in the middle of this controversy. So we have to remember that it wasn't only A-Rod, but also MLB itself that acted a fool. So this was really a battle of the legacies between, the commissioner at the time, Bud Selig, who was really on the eve of retirement. He, of course, is the steroid commissioner. He is the guy that knowingly exploited and profited from the steroid era, that we talked about, the McGuire-Sosa era. And now, on his way out the door, basically goes to his second in command, Rob Manfred, and says, look like I did something about this. Get me the biggest scalp, because the scandal broke with A-Rod in the middle of it. And he's like, if I take down A-Rod, basically, give him the largest suspension in the history of the game, I'll look like I did something about steroids in baseball. So it really was this epic battle of the legacies between Bud Selig and Alex Rodriguez.
A-Rod gets 211 games suspended, which got pled down to 162, which was a year. Tony gets cleared of everything. The state of Florida really doesn't look into it much because it got from Tallahassee kind of got squashed from whatever reason, whether it was A-Rod's connections or Major League Baseball's corrections. But all the investigators in the Miami area that were looking at this, it was squashed. And then Tony does a 60-minute thing because he's feeling so good. And then the feds come in on the DEA tip and eventually get him for doing the steroids and stuff for the high school kids. That's what he went to prison for. He was sentenced to 4 years, but only did 20 months, I think, right?
Yeah, rightfully so. He went to prison for those.
Oh, absolutely,
as he should.
As he should. I can't believe he only did. How did he get only 20 months on a 4-year deal?
At some point, it was reduced because in federal time, you got to do about at least, I think, 80% of your sentence. So at some point, he got a reduction. He had only anticipated getting about 2 years originally, and the judge came down very harshly on him at sentencing. So at some point, they decided to wait for things to cool down, and then filed for a petition for a reduction in sentence, and got it after he completed his drug rehabilitation program. He says now that he's 5 years off of.
What's he doing? What's he doing nowadays? Like this what do you think that that Tony's doing right now?
Right now, I would think that he's having a cigar and cafecito is what I would think he's doing right now. But I just saw him at Q&A at the Tower Theater on Cayocho actually last Saturday, and in good spirits and good health, and I don't know exactly what he's doing for work. I think he's got a job at like a cell phone store or something. It's like he's on probation, so he's got to have some kind of job.
What about Porter Fisher? What's that nut job doing?
Porter Fisher has several jobs actually. He's always gainfully employed. He's a very loyal employee, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
So people like to hire him, and he's always very vigilant and sincere in his duties.
A-Rod Manson goes on to make $452 million in his career. He played 2 more years after this. After he sat out for a year, and now gets hired to be an advisor to the younger players for the Yankees. Yankees pay him, and he's a Major League Baseball on-camera play-by-play guy, isn't he, Billy?
Yeah,
and I want to hire his handlers because he didn't seem like he suffered anything. I mean, except maybe the Hall of Fame. No, it's certainly the Hall of Fame, but that's it.
Oh, I would disagree. I think he's got a decent shot in years to come at the Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame is filled with a lot worse characters than Alex Rodriguez.
You think that you got to let Pete Rose in then? If you let A-Rod in, you got to let Pete Rose in.
Listen, I agree with you. I mean, they got segregationists and racists and wife beaters and drug addicts and all sorts of lunatics in the Hall of Fame. It's not exactly this sanctuary by any stretch of the imagination. I say let them all in if they played the game the way you have to play the game to be successful and qualified. There's always this weird bright line with gambling, though. You know how it's just this weird thing that baseball has.
No, I know. It's like kid touching.
Yeah, it's strange. It's just like this is.
I don't think
the
it's
one
that big a
thing
deal.
you just can't do. I'm sorry. I think Pete Rose has suffered more than priests who have molested children. I think it's for some reason gambling in baseball is worse than kid touching in the Catholic Church for some reason, and I don't really understand it. And I don't think they've ever found that he ever threw a game or manipulated a game based on his gambling. And I certainly don't think that. I mean, honestly, dude, I don't care about baseball. I mean, I hope that's clear from the movie too. I just don't really care about cheating in baseball or the Hall of Fame or any of this. Like it's already filled with so many asterisks, and so many and so much tomfoolery and corruption that I really. The fact that this is a discussion that should Alex be in the Hall of Fame? Who cares? I mean, there's literally the commissioner who enforced for decades a segregationist policy. Multiple players who refused to take the field if there were black players playing in a game. I mean, just deplorable people, terrible people are in the Hall of Fame. So why not Alex Rodriguez? Why not Charlie Hustle? Why not Pete Rose? I mean, who did more for the game and the popularity of baseball in the eras in which they were playing than the two of them? So what difference does it make?
Billy Corben on the phone. His new documentary, Screwball, available on video on demand on Friday. Also in select theaters as we speak. You can go to screwballfilm.com for more information. Follow Billy on Twitter at Billy Corben. Billy, what's your newest project that you're working on? Are you a couple projects ahead, or you got something going? What's going on? You taking a vacation?
Yeah. No, hell no. We are a couple of projects ahead. In fact, at the Miami Film Festival last month, we just premiered our latest Magic City Hustle. It is a documentary about last year, 2018, a bunch of former University of Miami Hurricanes athletes, some of whom are kind of down on their luck and looking for an opportunity or their next hustle. They got an opportunity to play professional highlight at a casino in Miami called Magic City Casino. And so these guys some of whom were world-class athletes in their day in football or baseball, they literally overnight become professional highlight players, put a cesta, that basket thing on their hand for the first time in their lives in January, February of 2018. And on July 1st, they are suddenly professional highlight players. And spoiler alert, they are some of the worst highlight players I've ever seen, out of the gate anyway.
Now, is it all about just how they can control the game based on the betting? Is that what it's all about?
It's not, because these guys are not good enough to control the game. So this is what one of the gamblers says. There's we interview the guys in the casino, and they're like, highlight's known to be this crooked or fixed sport, and he's like, these guys are too terrible to be able to know how to fix the game and everything. And what's funny is that the gamblers actually like it, because the guys it's so transparent. You see the guys come out and practice, and you can immediately see the abilities or lack thereof. So according to the gamblers, I don't know anything about it, but they think it's easier to handicap
when they suck, because the guys suck.
Yeah, than professional highlight. You can see which guys are better, and they can handicap them better. It's kind of hilarious, but it's actually this kind of wonderful underdog story. It's like Cool Runnings, or
right.
Slapshot or Major League or Bad News Bears. They're like this likable group of guys who are trying to live in Miami from hustle to hustle, and none of them have one job. Even their side hustles got side hustles, and it's that kind of economy down here. People call it the gig economy. We call it the hustle economy. And in Miami, we just learned, last month, United Way reported that 60%, that's 60% of Miami-Dade County residents can't afford to make ends meet. They can't even cover the basic expenses, the living expenses, cost of living, groceries, transportation.
So that means that means there's that many people on the hustle then.
Everybody, you have to be, and that doesn't necessarily mean illegal, but that just means that you got to have multiple jobs just to subsist, just to afford to live in Miami-Dade County. That's already at 60%. 40% of those are actually are the working poor, meaning 40% of those already have a job or multiple jobs. So these are folks who are working, in many cases, their butts off, and cannot cover the basic expenses of living in Miami. So it's kind of a case study almost of Miami in this era, and America in this era. That's the scary thing too, is that I think the Miami of today and the Florida of today is the America of tomorrow. So
we're just 10 years ahead of the white trashiness.
We're 10 years ahead of the everything down here, schemes and scams and economic developments and climate developments and real estate developments and anything, you want to know what calamities will befall us or challenges we'll face in the years to come as a nation. You just need to, take the temperature down here in South Florida. Yeah.
Billy Corben, hey, when the Magic highlight deal gets ready, make sure we get you back on, okay, bud?
Of course. You'll be the first I send it to. Thank you, sir.
Billy, man, great job with Screwball. I highly recommend it. I hope people go look at it. There's just so many new and cool things from the kid aspect. I mean, I'm just saying, good job, Billy. I'm really proud of you, bud.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Chat soon, Billy. Thanks, bud.
That guy's good.
Oh, he's good. It's so refreshing to get a guy that you can just kind of throw a little bit out, and he just takes it away. It just makes it that's why it goes so long, because I don't have to really carry it along. He carries it himself. God, I love Billy. Please go out and see that if you can. It's called Screwball.